Hello, thanks for coming to my talk. My name is Andrii Soldatenko. I am software engineer originally from Ukraine, but currently living in Austria, in Vienna. I'm working at Dynatrace as a software engineer and also as a tech evangelist. I'm a big fan of CrossFit and different gymnastics. By the way, it's my third PyCon Italy as a speaker. And yeah, let's start. So today we will talk about a lot of debugging stuff. Everyone knows that debugging is twice as hard as writing programs in the first place. So if you're clever as you wrote it, how will you even debug it? So the history of debugging is very interesting. Engineers and programmers have long used of term bug in their systems, and if it's something crept into flawlessness of program that caused effects that no one could explain, and from psychological standpoint, it's easier to blame some bug rather than take responsibility and say that we made the bugs and they're ours to fix. Having said that, there has been one recorded instance, which I show on previous slide, where a real bug has crept into a system, and that's why since September 9, 1947, it's placed in the Museum of American History. But let's discuss a little bit development. The development of cloud-native applications, which is nowadays very popular, is hard, and it requires actual understanding of logic and acting on this understanding. And usually I call it my 8 stages of debugging, inspired by Reddit thread, but I slightly extend it. So my first stage is that can't happen, of course. My next stage, when I work on something, okay, that does not happen on my machine, it works, but does not work on production. The third stage is should not happen. And of course, next stage is why does it happen? And next step, usually you sit and like, oh, I see, I know what's the problem, I think I can fix it. And the next one, how did that even work ever? It should not work. And the few stages, my personal, I love it. Who wrote this shit? Who did it? And of course, when I do git blame, oh wait, that was me. So there are many different books and official documentation about how to, I don't know, write programs. But there is no books how to debug the program, especially in cloud environment like Kubernetes or even just using Docker. So I have a question to you. How can I debug my Python program? Please raise a hand and tell me your variants. Okay. More? Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, we are prints. So first, easy peasy, just add a print everywhere and you're done. You did your debugging, so you see everything. So someone, I think, just told about logs. Same with logs, like more mature, but same stuff. Add logs, read logs, and you are done. Any other variants? Sorry? Nice. Which one? Oh, yeah. Nice one, but it's just a Python. What do you usually do? Yeah, go ahead. No. Nice catch, but no. Okay. Just a REPL. So run Python, and that's it. So you can Python -i your script, and it will execute your script, and then it will run a REPL. So what is REPL? It just read, eval, and execute. And then you can just print function, whatever, variables, even change something, because we use interpreter. It's very easy. So, okay, and last one, my favorite one. Yeah. Hmm? Yeah, it's same like debuggers. Any other ideas? Before debuggers. So after logs, but before debuggers. We have one more option. Okay, I will give you a beer if you can say my variant. Okay, wine. We are in Italy. A pizza, free pizza. Okay. Okay, my favorite one is duck debugging. So this is a great technique to revisit your observation and explain the problem to someone else. So, and someone else can be, it's not important who it is. So it can be just a rubber duck or whatever. This works because teaching someone else force you to take different perspective of the problem and help to resolve like the inconsistency between your assuming and what actually it's doing. So since that someone else can be totally passive, usually people using small duck and you can talk with a duck. Okay, more seriously, of course, we will talk more about debuggers. So when you don't know what to do, you can use debugger, but breakpoint. It's nice that you know all basics, so I should not discuss it. But before we go to debuggers, I just would like you to show you some. Nowadays, we have many languages and many editors. So adding a debugger to new language or to new IDE is like not very easy, and it requires significant effort. But it's also frustrating when you switch between languages and you have different editors and you have to play with all this zoo. So that's why there's idea behind the debug adapter protocol, which like abstract debugging support of tools between debuggers and runtimes. And so we know that current debuggers will never support DAP. So that's why like people wrote this adapter which try to communicate between editors and debuggers. So we will use this technique a little bit later. That's why I discuss it. So this is like Python debuggers officially in wiki page. There are many. They're mostly CLI. Some of them has UI, and they all does not support this protocol, unfortunately, which means we can't do some fancy stuff. But now let's discuss how you can debug on dev machine or dev environment. So assuming you have a fast API or whatever application which has an endpoint, and what you can do, as many of us just mentioned, you can put a breakpoint or just type it using standard PDB debugger, or you can use whatever package you like which do the same, or using visual tool like PyCharm and put breakpoint, or VS Code and also put a breakpoint. And it's very easy, right? You will run it. If it's CLI tool, it will open REPL session kind of. It will show you the line where is a breakpoint. You can, if you know like GDB or other debuggers, you can just do quickly next, 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 type next, or just using shortcuts like L or N or whatever. And that's it. So you can debug any program. But my talk not about it. Nowadays on production, we have like a Docker file which installs many things. It has multi-stage, so it has different stages. One stage build, then another stage like a production copy stuff, and it runs UVcorn, for example, if it's a web server, or it's run a Python directly. And now the question, okay, you build it, you own it, but okay, how I can debug it? And next step, of course, we have a Kubernetes. How many of you using Kubernetes on your daily? Yeah, so it's my audience. Nice. Yeah, we have a Kubernetes. We can't just easily put a breakpoint and like say, I want to debug something. And probably we need to go deeper, right? So let's define a problem. So the problem is, yeah, you have a cluster. I simplified the problem as much as I can. So, and Kubernetes has a pod, for example, which is a minor deployment unit of computing that can create and manage Kubernetes. And under the hood, pod has containers, and container has a Python app or many other apps, maybe different containers. And then it's your application, and you know it has a bug. Locally, you can't reproduce it. So that's, if you can reproduce it locally, you don't need it. But if you can't, here's the question: how to debug this containerized application? And here's the answer: remote debugging. It's useful when the process is not associated for the controlling terminal or like running on a different host. So PDB cannot connect to it. So we will do a trick. We will run debugger in like a server mode, and we will try to connect from debugger client mode to this container. Yeah, unfortunately, there's something with monitors. I can't show you demo, but I have copied of demo in slides. So, assuming you have a VS Code and you would like to do this trick, so first you need to change your configuration, and the important stuff is we have to attach to the something. So we are not trying to debug what we are running locally. We are saying to VS Code that we will connect to local host and port where debugger is running. Second step, we have to adjust our Docker file. By default, of course, Python does not support it, so there is a debug.py Python package, which, remember I told you about adapter for debuggers. So this is implementation of this adapter protocol. So it will wrap your application, and it will add like wait for client, and also it will expose a port, and then you can use your running UVcorn blah 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 for your application, and then that's it. You build a container, you run it locally. Yeah, if we have a time after talk, I will show you the demo how it works, but you run it, and next step, you just open your VS Code. There is a button run and debug. You click it, and it will ask you host and port, where your debugger is running, and that's it. You can connect and you can debug your application inside running Docker container on your local machine, for example. And yeah, so supposed to be a demo. Okay, you can say, if I don't have VS Code or I don't like visual debuggers, like I prefer to avoid them, there are few clones of PDB which support this trick. So you can install PDB clone. It's like a fork, which unfortunately does not work with 3.12 as of now, but I think they will fix it. It's mostly same debugger, but it has set trace remote like method, which you have to expose the port and host, and it will do the same. You run your application inside the Docker, and then you can just using telnet and connect to it, and from telnet session you can just use same PDB commands as you did before, but like debugging something which is running remotely. And yeah, so here I'm showing you the demo. So you can connect, and you can just next, 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 find the line, print variables, whatever you need. Another one, I would say a little bit more advanced, is PUDB, which is like same as fork, but has slightly different UI, I would say. So you just set trace, so like put a breakpoint somewhere, and also you have to configure term size, host port, blah, blah, blah. And then you can again connect through telnet and debug it. To term size, you configure which size of the client will be. I will show you on next one. Yeah, here you can connect. So I run it, and as you can see, I connect using telnet or whatever. And it's like a old school UI if you don't like it, but it's like this. So you can just use breakpoints and debug your program. The benefit, you can do it also inside a container. So you can run one container with your app, another one with your debugger. And if you don't have UI on a machine where you try to debug something, it's a very good way of doing. So you will see it inside terminal. And of course, you can whatever print variable name, go back next, step into functions, etc. Okay, so we just learned some basic tricks with containers, and but with Kubernetes, of course, it can be hard if you need to change codes and you need to build image, then you need to push it to registry, then you need to change your Docker file. So another trick is very simple. You can just create a Docker entry point which has extra logic, which will run, for example, some debug flags and override your CMD, and then you can use it. So, yeah, for example, in Kubernetes world, you will set remote debug port environment variable, and it will change your CMD. So on runtime, you can change it without changing everything. And of course, your final Docker file will be much simpler than before. So you just entry point, and you're done. And yeah, and your manifest will look like this. Yeah, supposed to be another demo. If we have time, I will show you in the very end of the talk, these two demos. Yeah, you apply, and as you can see, I just set environment variable for my pod, which signals, okay, override CMD, and now I can connect using VS Code, for example. Okay. Next one is a little bit tricky and unrelated to debuggers itself. Assuming you have you have to debug a pod, but I created a mind map which helps you to find the proper way what's to do next. Sometimes you can't run debugger, so first you can just describe a pod, and depends on your situation, if pod in pending mode or waiting mode or terminating mode, you do different stuff. Yeah. Next one is, okay, we know we have to debug init container. For someone who is not familiar, Kubernetes has concept of like init containers, which is like supposed to be runs before everything else. Usually you can run migrations in init containers, you can run some checks, and it runs once, and then it will run your main container. So on my screen you see I have a init container, which is somehow not ready, and it's waiting. There is no logs usually for this container, and I don't know what's to do. So the tip is very simple and straightforward. You override command of your init container with sleep, for example, dummy sleep, and then you can connect to this container using exec, kubectl exec, like in just Docker, then you can start doing something inside. And next diagram will help you to understand what's do next. Depending on if your container image includes some debugging tools? If yes, easy. You just connect using exec, as I showed, and you're done. If no, it's a tricky one. Again, nowadays, cloud platform, cloud native applications, and all these security requirements gives us very strict rules. For example, you can run application without shell. So you can't exec into it because it doesn't have a shell. So just run one process, no shell, nothing, no tools. For this case, you have two scenarios. One is using copy of pod. So you can just copy one pod and share processes. Or you can run ephemeral debug container. What it is, it's very useful for interactive troubleshooting, of course. And I don't know, when image does not includes debugging utilities, such as distro-less images. An important note, not every container runtime supports it, but you can do this trick. So you run debug, and as you can see, I share processes. So in this container, I see my Python application running in another container as another process. But here I can introspect what it does, maybe no permissions, maybe other issues. So it's network problems, etc. So it's not always Python problem. It may be something related to Kubernetes or whatever. And using copy is same as previous one, but instead of using same container, it will copy, and you can override image. For example, I have my own image, and I can share processes, and my image now includes shell. Then I can do this. In the end, I can use shell, and it looks like this. So you can see my sample app is still running 40 minutes already, but my debug container exactly as previous one, but with some overrides. So I can investigate, maybe file system does not have permissions to read something. We don't have volumes mounted properly, etc., etc. Maybe we need to ping something or check if we have port open for this container. Yeah, last but not least, when you're in this container world, and if you remember, we just build an image and do nothing, we don't know the version. It's important to somehow add a git hash to your image, so when you debug something, you exactly know the version you're trying to debug. Otherwise, you can probably debug something different. So locally, you use, I don't know, main version, and on Kubernetes, you have release version, so you can validate it. So you can add a environment variable git hash, for example, which will include some version details, and yeah, run it. Yeah, very last but not least, you can also use this great plugin and tool, k8s, which gives you visual way of seeing what's inside your cluster. And my favorite one is add a plugin. So plugin with adding debug containers, with not repeat myself with this typing, share processes, blah, blah, blah. So you can just hit Ctrl-H and it will do it for you. Yeah, short summary, and I will try to give you a demo. Debugger does not fix your bugs. It just runs them in slow motion. Don't forget to add some details to your application inside Docker images. Of course, you have to scale down your traffic to one instance to avoid misses of request of your pod. What does it mean? If you usually you run like 5 copies of your app on production, or like whatever 100, and if you run all of them and try to debug all of them, you don't know on which pod Kubernetes will route your request. So scale down it as much as you can so you know what you're doing. And use debuggers as much as possible. From my personal experience, many people are still using prints, logs, whatever, and it's very slowed down. So if you're using debugger, you can very quickly identify the problem rather than just trying to guess what's wrong. And yeah, automate everything with hotkeys just to don't repeat yourself. And as a future reading, I'm suggesting to you, so I have just mostly my repos, but first one is a version of debug container which you can fork or create your own. So it includes all my tools which I need, and it has a pipeline which deploy it to registry, so it's public, and the name is short. Second one and third one is all samples and examples from the slides, all Docker files. You can use them locally to learn how it works for Python and Golang. Yeah, I have a slide with questions, but before questions, let me try quickly to demo. I hope we have...
You can use the website in the detail of this talk. There is a link to Slido.
Okay. Let's see if it works. First, do you see my screen? Nice. Can be tough to type it in one hand, but I will try. So, first demo, remember, we did... So I run a container which has some app, fast API, and you see my screen? Nice. So it has like dummy model, fast API. Now this is a button. So because I have a config, it just connect to my app. Let's check. You see, debugger is waiting. The app is started. So if I click to the app, because I have a breakpoint, it will stop here. And it's interesting. Where is the console? But never mind. And you can see some variables. So it's normal debugging session. And you see my browser is waiting. So if I continue, it shows me dummy message. Easy. So this one is, we learn it. So demo one, run just this example, which I showed you from the repo. You can explore it on your own. I think this one. Yeah, this one. So it was, we just have a container, we override, so we can debug with VS Code inside container. Of course, we can do same with PUDB, but it's maybe too much, so for now. But you can do the same with Telnet. Okay, more interesting one. I will show you. Oh, nice, it works. So I will show you what I have. I have Kubernetes cluster running locally with my app. So I deploy it. And I will run second demo. What it does, it creates a namespace. It deploys an app. I did it before, so we not waste your time. What it does, also, it runs port forward because we run our container inside cluster, and it does not have any services, nothing, so it's a local port. It also has, remember, environment variable which expose debugger port. So if I remove this, it will turn your app in normal mode. Okay. So we are good. And now, what we can do, we again, same app, we connect using same. So it's same localhost and port because I port forward Kubernetes port to my localhost import, so it's same. And same for application, I did same. And now we do a trick inside Kubernetes. And to prove it, we go to the cluster, we check logs, we see that debugger is running, app is waiting, so it's previous one. And we can click continue. It shows us same messages because it's same app. And in logs we see new record. It's hard to see because the time is, there is no timing, but it's working. And yeah, that's the demo. So, and of course if we stop it and we go to VS Code and try to connect again, it will say, oh, nothing is running. So it's not a fake demo, just in case. But, yes. But you have a repo, so you can just go to the repo. I will share it, and you can use it. So you have a bunch of examples, so you can understand it with different tools. Not only, but VS Code seems the most easy and familiar for many, so I did it. I'm not using personally VS Code, so just if I did something wrong, let me know. Okay, questions? Stop mirroring. No questions? Yeah, I don't see you. Go ahead. Yeah, do you need a microphone?
Well, I try to not yell because I present on Saturday, so I still need my voice. So yeah, I stand up to be more polite. So Aaron Prohachenko here. So I may have built my question on the basis of the wrong assumption. So I stepped down from being an active Python developer like 4 years ago. So this module, like you called it PyDB, or how was it? This one is not familiar for me, but my assumption is that once you stop the application for the debugging, it cannot accept other requests, right?
Yes, it will not.
So in real life clusters, you usually have health probes, readiness probes, and then you have some kind of load balancer to not expose the bare nodes to even to the developers. And how would then this approach work if the application would be killed immediately, well, almost immediately, as soon as it stops responding to the liveness and readiness probes?
It will not. No, it will not stop. So I will show you a demo one more time. It will not stop. This is a nice thing about this approach. So if you remove a breakpoint. Oh, nice. No trust. I don't trust myself. Where is these settings? So it should be mirror, right? You see it now? Okay. So the plus of this approach that you can run and debug it, right? So I just connect it. You see? I connect it. I run this demo. And now I go to the, assuming your Kubernetes scheduler, schedule a pod, and try to health check. So if you release this button, it's just disconnect. If you release it, your app is working, so it can handle requests. You see?
While you debug it, it will not respond to liveness probes, right? So
It will if you set a breakpoint to the inside the road with a health probe, it will not. If you set for another road, so if you want to debug health probe, it can be tricky. But again, Kubernetes will wait. You can configure thresholds in your manifest and say like whatever 5 minutes, an interval 1 minute, and you can try to catch it between 5 minutes. Sometimes it's enough. So, yeah, I hope I answer your question. Any other questions?
Okay, there are some questions on Slido. Do you suggest running debuggers in Kubernetes all the time or create containers on demand with debugger enabled? How about security aspect?
It's totally unsecure. I mean, it's not a production work. So
Okay.
it's just for... So I'm not debugging this. I mean, it's not a production cluster, right? First of all. So we debug, but sometimes your app requires interaction with Kubernetes, or it has a bug when you run in Kubernetes. So you have a dev or staging or local cluster, and you like have all dev tools inside image, but you're not debugging production. I mean, in Python it can be very tricky. In other languages it can be a little bit easier because you can put a binary, add a little bit more permissions, and you can even debug on production without breaking security rules, because you will undo it after you finish debugging session.
Okay, another one. When debugging remotely through VS Code, do you need to have the same code locally, or does it get the code from the server?
This is a very good question, because it does not get a code from the server, but it used local code, if I'm not mistaken. So when you see this, it's a very tricky one. When you see this, it's a local code, and you set breakpoints in the local code. But if you run different code in container, if I'm not mistaken, it will not work. It will just skip your breakpoint or something, because usually how debugger works, it just knows the line number and some metadata. If line numbers is amiss, because debugger does not understand semantic or whatever, so it just needs a line. So it should be same. That's why I showed you, make sure that git hash inside your Docker image, so you can easily compare it using like just by typing like something like it. At least in my machine it works, because it's an ls. So you see, okay, my local commit and my image as the same, we are good.
Okay, thanks for the explanation and the great questions too. Another question. In your examples, you started the program with the debugger. Do you have a strategy to connect it to an already running Python program?
Yeah, you have, it's a little bit another topic, but VS Code with this debug plugin I show you, which supports this DAP, has a feature to attach to running PID. So if app is already running, you can also attach to it. I don't have example here, but it's possible. It's not possible with every debugger. Some debuggers, from my slides, they support it, some not. So for example, PDB doesn't support it, so you can't attach. So that's a very good question as well.
Perfect. Why all quotes about debugging are anonymous?
Sorry?
Why all quotes about debugging are anonymous?
It's a very good question, because I don't know the answer. And no one knows. If you know, I will add. Maybe it's you an author and just like very shy.
Okay. There are no other questions on Slido. Other questions here? We have 10 minutes.
Okay, but you can catch me after, so we can discuss it.
Okay.
So, thank you.
Thank you very much.